Hey everybody, welcome back again for week 6. I'm Mike from JinbuPal. I'm here again with David. David and I are co-founders of JinbuPal, and David's been using the app to learn Mandarin Chinese. So we've just been catching up with David throughout his progress to see how he's doing. So after this video, or right now if you want to, if you haven't been following this series, just click the link and head on over to the first video of the series, and you can see the whole progress of what it's like for David trying to learn Chinese in the most efficient way possible using JinbuPal. So yeah, let's check in with David and see how he's doing. How's it going?
Pretty good. It was it's Memorial Day weekend, so it's kind of on vacation for the past couple of
Yeah.
days. And honestly, this past week was kind of a dud for me, just like in my studying. Just out of town with family, didn't have a lot of time, and just kind of like missed a lot of days. So let me pull up my screen and
And and because you've been primarily using the laptop version up till now, right? Or the desktop version, right?
yeah, I've been using the desktop. Every now and then I would use the app, like use the site on my phone, like if I was on the go. But primarily, I like pulling it up on my computer just because I can kind of fit more stuff on the screen, and I don't know. It was just kind of just a habit I got into. So
Yeah,
that kind of made it a little bit more difficult, also, just in terms of like my routine of not necessarily being at my computer.
yeah, definitely.
Um, so let me show.
Yeah, I found when I was doing this, if I went on vacation for a week, I would also be pretty much the same, except for if there's sometimes I'd go away for the weekend, and that's when I would usually try to find any excuse. I mean, I still to this day I try to find any excuse to not drive and figure out who else can drive so that I can just spend, several hours kind of with my head down in a book or in my phone or whatever, and I would spend a lot of that time. But yeah, I mean, it's tough to do during those.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm up. I think the last time we talked, I was at like 60% JinbuPal score, and you can just see the big old flat line of
Mhm.
just missed missed days. So I don't know. I'm trying not to feel too guilty about it. I think that like stuff like this happens, and it's just a matter of like being able to get back into my routine and making sure. I mean, we've talked a lot about retaining the content, but making sure that especially stuff that I was learning like during this period, like I make sure that I remember, because I wasn't doing a lot of reinforcement
Yeah.
during that. One thing that's different from the last time we talked was we made some adjustments to kind of the progress area. I don't know if we want to go too deeply into that, but we've kind of simplified it a lot. Much more focused on sort of your JinbuPal score overall, and instead of trying to quantify like how many pinyin out of however many are in JinbuPal, we're just kind of focused on what your current count is, I guess.
Yeah, definitely.
Um,
Well,
but
I think the charts are still looking good. It's you already start reaching that plateau a little bit, so it's kind of you're gonna start seeing those anyway. It'll be interesting to see, once you hit that 80%, how the total trend looks on the JinbuPal score plot, for example.
yeah, yeah, that's true. Some things I did do, I actually, while I wasn't doing a lot of like learning new characters when I was on vacation, I did pull out the Pinyin Trainer app that I was using. And I think right now I'm using like the trial version of it or something. So it only lets me do 25 um, different Pinyin a day
Oh,
before it
okay.
kind of like says like you've hit your limit. But because it has that limit, like every day I kind of see like if am I getting better or worse. It just kind of like hearing uh, hearing the tones and then like picking which tone it is. And
Yeah.
so it's actually, I think, made me a little bit more confident in just being able to identify, like, is that the first tone, second tone, whatever. Um, and makes me more comfortable, like, when I'm using JinbuPal and I see, what is the accent? Is it just called an accent?
It's a tone
Uh,
mark.
yeah, when I see the tone mark, like, in JinbuPal, I can I'm more confident in kind of saying it in my head, if that makes
Yeah.
sense, as
Hmm.
opposed to just saying like, okay, this is the third tone. And so I think that's helping a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and I
Um,
think kind of what we talked about last week, it's really helpful. Just every time you see them, just try to say it in your head using the correct tone. And you're going to be wrong a bunch of times because it's fairly arbitrary and difficult to remember. But over time, you'll just have so much repetition, especially with the reading, that it will get to where, especially the most common characters, you never miss those.
yeah. Speaking of like reading, um, so I had the reading that I did do this past week. I kind of got a better feel for what my study style is when I'm doing my reading. So I'll go to a site, especially ones like Fortune or New York Times that have kind of the side by side, which is helpful. We kind of talked about this last time. Um, we got kind of a little trainer which highlights the characters that I know that I've like linked in JinbuPal. Um, and so I'll kind of just go paragraph by paragraph, especially like I'll read what it is. I'll kind of look at the sentence structure, look at the characters that I know. I have it's Zhongwen. Is that how you say it?
Zhongwen.
Zhongwen.
Yeah.
The extension going, so like that can help me if I forget anything. And then oftentimes I'll also pull up this Pinion chart website that has the audio. And I just use that to like quickly pull up tones that I like need help reminding of like what it sounds like. Or
Yeah.
I will, if there's like a word that I know like both of the characters for, um, I'll often go into JinbuPal and like search for it. And so let me see if I can find one that I did earlier. I think I was reading like an article on coronavirus testing in Wuhan, and what word was it? Um, in the article, it talked about like medical workers, and so
Wow.
I think uh, like there were a lot of words that
Yeah.
used uh,
Gongren. Gongren.
Gongren,
Yeah. Okay.
and so I quickly started to like I could identify those throughout the article, but also was like putting together the connections in my head, and so I went through and checked off some of the words um, that hit some of those things. It was interesting because like how do you so like this word and this word have the same characters, just the order is different. And is that just something you have to get just practice? Like,
That what you've just highlighted is what I think is the hardest thing about learning Chinese.
huh,
Most people think that it's the characters. I think the characters are easy in comparison to remembering that because it's one thing to remember it when you're reading it because you have the visual cue, but then trying to remember to say it correctly, it's easy to say things backwards And that can be really confusing because you might be saying something backwards, and it's not because you're confusing it with a different word. You just forget the order and the sound of the actual word that you mean to say. And oftentimes, from the context of what you're talking about, somebody will correct you and know what you mean. It might take them a second, but I find that to be the hardest thing, and that's why the input is so important, because the more and more times you see it, you hear it, you get a feeling and a sense for the word as a whole rather than as two separate sounds. And yeah, I mean, it's tough, and I wouldn't say that I have a particular trick for it or anything like that. But I would say that sometimes it is helpful, like those two, Gongren and Ren Gong, that you just showed there. It can be helpful because you can remember them because you know a distinct difference between them. Just like how I said before, sometimes you remember tones based on a context of how it sounds in multiple different words, so it helps you remember for a particular word.
Because Gongren means worker, but Ringong means like artificial or like manual labor or something like that.
Yeah, and it can also be like it can be used for artificial intelligence. The artificial part of that is Rengong.
Huh. Interesting. Yeah. I guess I can already start to see some of the input stuff because like some of the you start to see the words so much, and there'll be characters that like off the bat I didn't, even though I had said that I knew that character, like I didn't really remember it when I first pulled up the article. But like now I'm never gonna forget Gong because I saw it so much.
Yeah, exactly.
Um,
But if you hadn't even looked at the character by itself, I think that process would be a lot harder. So that's kind of what you're kind of touching on is another reason that I wouldn't stress too much if a particular character has a whole bunch of definitions or meanings, general meanings that we've assigned to it in the dictionary, because what's most important is that you're familiar with it and you've gotten in your head some contextual idea of what it means. And even more important than that, I think, is just that you know the pinyin of it, because it gives you this kind of like foothold that you can pull up, you can use the JinbuPal trainer like you have there and highlight all the characters. And it's mostly about bringing up your confidence to approach the words, because like I said, that's the hardest part. In engaging with the words in the context, and with the ones that are of high frequency like that, you're going to now have more and more experiences with that in a very short amount of time, with a bunch of characters that are used 50 times in one article. And so maybe each time you'll notice one or two characters, hey, I'm seeing this again and again and again, and you'll kind of cement that one into your brain. And then the next time you pick up another one, and they all just kind of start to coalesce together.
I think it's also helping with the tones too, because it's like if I see this character every single article I open up, I see the same character like 100 times. It's like, okay, I'm gonna remember what the tone is for this now. Now that I feel a little bit more confident in just like what the tones sound like. So I'm hoping that this next coming week I'll start to fill out a lot of those tones, especially for high frequency characters.
Yeah, that'll be really good to do. And kind of as you just mentioned that also, going from the reading to learning the tone, and then go back and check it off, and then maybe you review more so with the tones. But I think that's going to be pretty typical for our users to, rather than learning the tones through repetitive flashcard use, it's through the repetitive reading use that you're going to get that. And it's just
Yeah.
going to stick better. I mean, it sticks better when you're reading an interesting article about Joe Rogan, making some huge contract with Spotify than it is if you're like hammering through a ton of flashcards, especially if it's high contact, high frequency. Something that's lower frequency, I mean, sometimes you do need to just kind of beat some of those into your brain, but yeah, I mean, it's gonna stick a lot better.
Yeah.
Cool. Well,
I think that's all I got this week. I mean, hoping to have more to show for next week, but excited to get back into the routine. So
sounds good. Cool. Well, yeah, we'll talk next week for week 7, and so anybody watching, make sure you hit the subscribe button and give us a like. Check out our website, JinbuPal.com, where we have tons of other blog posts to supplement everything that you'll find on this channel, and where once the app for JinbuPal is fully released, you'll be able to sign up on our website at JinbuPal.com. So thanks again, everybody, and we'll talk later. So see you next week.
All right, see you, man.